Welcome to the Bait and Banter Podcast, the ultimate show for everyday anglers and outdoor enthusiasts. Dive into a sea of stories, tips, and tricks as we explore the diverse fishing scenes of the Pacific Northwest. Join us and fellow anglers to share, learn, and laugh. The Bait and Banter Podcast is your hook into the world of fishing and outdoor adventures.
Today, I have one of the anglers from the USA kayak fishing team that just in the past few weeks went to Costa Rica and competed, and they actually got gold. Angler Mark Veary. He also happens to be one of my good friends. He was also the only angler from the Pacific Northwest to be able to participate in this. And that's a pretty prestigious thing. Mark, thanks for joining the podcast today.
Hey, Jim. How you doing?
Great, man. Thank you very much for being on. This is it's a pretty anticipated podcast for me. I know a lot of people really want to hear not only your trip to Costa Rica, but the experience and just the overall experience period of being able to participate in such an amazing, an event.
Yeah, I'm still a little dazed by everything that went on and how crazy and fun it was and all the different people I met.
Can you tell us some of the team members that you got to fish with?
Sure. So, everybody knows who Boogie D is, or David Elgus. He was a guy who was on Pacific Warriors. They had a show for a season or two in Hawaii. One of the guys who started this up along with David is Allen Sansano. And Allen Sansano is sort of the godfather of kayak fishing on the West Coast. So he's a good friend of mine, and he was the guy who threw out the invite for me. We were traveling with another one of the principals in the U.S. kayak or U.S. angling kayak saltwater fishing team, who is Annie Nagel. She's in the background actually drumming up a whole lot of the support, making sure that all the requirements are met, both for the international team requirements as well as the U.S. stateside support from USA Angling. Other guys that were on there, there were some real powerhouses on the team. Dakota Dunmeyer is big name on the East Coast. He does a lot of seminars. He wins a whole lot of contests there. Justin Ritchie. It's funny. Justin won his place back in the world. What is it? I guess it's the World Championship that's coming up in Spain in October. He won a seat back in a competition in Florida right before that Costa Rica trip took place. It was kind of interesting. He definitely deserved to be there. Who else do we have on the team? Corey Oppo is a guy out of Hawaii who lives on Maui, chases huge fish off his kayak all the time. He wins a lot of the local competitions there, and he's a really good ambassador. Let's see, who else might people recognize? Well, of course, Robert Field Trips. It's funny because we would tease him a lot. We were calling him Hot Bobby or Bobby Caliente. That was actually our code on the VHF radios to switch channels so we could exchange sensitive information without the other teams picking it up. Anytime somebody said Bobby Caliente, we were off to channel 68.
Everybody knows who Robert Field is, or should.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because I'd watched a couple of his videos before it because I didn't know who he was, and I was looking for info on how to fish for these types of species. And it was actually really informative. And the guy that you meet in person is ridiculously genuine. He's actually a really good guy to hang out with. He's really helpful in troubleshooting. The guy's really focused. But, it doesn't turn him into an asshole, which happens to a lot of people.
He is also, I would say, I think Robert Field is also responsible for a lot of people that were thinking about it, going ahead and doing it. I remember for me, back when I had kayaks, I had the big sleds, and I was transitioning from the sleds to the kayaks. I remember watching one of his videos, and he was showing the Pelican Catch 120. It had just come out, and he was floating it down a river. I believe it was somewhere in Texas. I was like, man, I'm going to get one of those. That's awesome. I'm going to get one. So that was my first, quote unquote, fishing kayak, was the Catch 120. Of course, as soon as I got that boat and realized, I want to be able to troll a little easier, do a little easier stuff. Then not too far in the future there, I switched to Hobies and bought a couple of them. Right. So I think my most memorable one is the one he was fishing off the Texas coast, I believe it was, and flipped this kayak with a shark, and he was in an old Outback. Yeah, so never.
So I was actually kind of surprised because Robert Field was actually a genuinely nice guy. Guy started his own kayak line or kayak company, Lightning Kayaks, about 8 years ago. and he's definitely applied everything he's learned. So he and Dakota Dunmeyer and Adam Fisk have all been guides at Los Buzos also.
Destination place for so many of us. We all would love to go to Los Buzos.
Absolutely. And you know, these guys were like the ringers that were brought in on the team. They fished for the extra large versions of all the fish that were on the roster to be caught. So they had a whole lot of experience between.
So what you're saying, it was like a multi-species event, only it was multi-species per team? Every team had so many species they had to catch, and you split up and caught those species?
Well, you know, that was one of the potential routes that we were going to go early on in this, but we realized that the best strategy, honestly, was to go for small fish and then let the specialists go for the big fish. So there were 17 species, ranging from needlefish up to sailfish. And, you know, we've got some guys who are really experienced with yo-yo jigging in deep water for these premier species. But, you know, people like me coming into this, I have so little exposure to the species we were fishing for that I fished it like a little kid. I went in the shallows and I picked up the mini versions of these fish because it didn't matter what size they were still points.
Oh my gosh. What you guys are calling yo-yo jigging, you mean like speed jigging or slow pitch jigging? Oh my God, that is so that's my favorite way to fish, especially pelagics or your deep water ocean saltwater fish and in the warm water stuff. Holy crap, that is so fun. It's just now starting to pick up here on the West Coast. When I say West Coast, I don't mean California because they do it, but as far as Oregon and Washington go, even in Alaska, the slow pitch jigging is just now really starting to pick up. And I've gotten to the point, especially because of Brandon Svoboda, who brought the slow pitch jigging and even the speed jigging to Hawaii. He was the reason it went there because he was one of the, well, he brought Major Craft. Major Craft has some of the premier jigs when it comes to speed jigging, slow pitch jigging, and Brandon brought all of that stuff to Hawaii. And he even though he doesn't like Brandon does not like the spotlight or all that stuff. He wants to just stay in the background, but the guy is an amazing, amazing angler when it comes to an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to that kind of stuff. That guy is it. But that kind of fishing I hope you got to do it because, oh my God, it's fun. I mean, just real quick, I know I'm off course here, but like when I went to Hawaii, me, Brandon, and
Robert,
my cousin Mike, and then Robert Pereira went, we were fishing 800 foot of water, and we're dropping 180 gram jig down that deep. And you think, for me out here, when we're fishing off the coast for halibut, you go out of you get in 500 foot of water. It's a 36 to 48 ounce hunk of lead with a giant piece of squid or something on there, and you drop it down 500 feet. It's a 5-minute descend, and then it's a 20-minute ascend to reel it back in. I mean, you're dying. But with these jigs, they went down quick. And even though you're 800 feet deep, you're thinking, oh my God, I don't want to reel this in. It was nothing. It was literally nothing. In fact, you look at the graph, you could see the fish, and you speed jig up through them and drop it.
I got off a bluefin trip last week, and we were dropping 16 to 32 ounce jigs 500 feet and been burning them up from sunset to sunrise. That will just kill you.
But that's like what's a 16 ounce jig though?
400 grams?
Because I think 180 is like 7 ounces or something, or close to it.
Yeah, so
maybe 200 grams.
So 16 ounces.
But did you go to California?
Yeah, I went down to San Diego. I was on a boat with Allen Sansano and Alan Bushnell and a bunch of their friends.
So there's a guy that has a podcast out of Coos Bay that I keep track of all the time. I'm going to look him up here. Maybe you met him. He just literally got back from a bluefin trip.
There are lots of them going out.
Like 2 days ago, where there are lots of boats.
Oh, yeah. There's lots of boats. All the charters down there, ever since the bluefin started up in earnest about 5 years ago, they booked those charters out. So they've got 1 day, 2 day, and 3 day trips that go out there. Ours was a 3 day, so we shot out 110 miles before we even started fishing.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. Because they caught, like, I think the biggest one he got was 180 pounds.
Yeah, mine was 154.
fight harder than albacore?
Dude, it was the hardest fight I have ever had. I've caught heavier fish. I've never caught such a hard fighting and more consequential fish.
So that's like stripers. I tell everybody a striper is like catching a car doing 55 miles an hour and then reeling it in, because that's what they are, dude. A big striper will wreck your day. Like, if you've not caught those, Mark, oh my gosh, they're so fun. They're addictive. Oh, they're my new lust. Like, I cannot wait to go back. And we're going to try to go back in October because they get thick on the rivers in there. And you should come down with us when we do it in, when I go in the end of May, and then I'm going to start going later in the year. I know Jed wants to go. They're delicious to eat, but the little guys are fun to catch. They fight hard, but the big ones, holy crap, man, they fight hard. So I'm imagining a bluefin tuna is like casting at a jet airplane and then reeling it in.
So yeah, they're kind of interesting. So when you hook them, when you're yo-yo jigging like that, most of the time they're hitting on the retrieve. On the stop, it's just like you hit the bottom, but it's 1,000 feet of water and you're 400 feet out. The initial set, they're kind of docile, right? You feel it load up, and then you take your rod and literally crank it up on the rail. You lever it up so you can get a hook set into them, and then all hell breaks loose. Some of them shoot for the horizon. Other ones will run up and down the side of the boat. And they're not in control for at least 15 minutes. Anything over 100 pounds is going to be out of control for 15 minutes. And then it's a very slow slog for the rest of the fight to get them in, because if they want to go someplace else, they go someplace else. And if the sharks come up, like I had mine right next to the boat, and a 12-foot mako came out from the shadow of the boat. Fish saw it, and I had 400 yards or 400 feet of line out in an instant.
Wow. The makos are good eating too, but 12-footer, holy smokes.
That was huge.
It was like 2 foot wide, 3 foot
3 foot wide. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Those are the only shark that, they say that the only shark that is not afraid of anything is a mako.
Yeah.
Even a great white's afraid of something. They say the mako fears nothing. Well, I cannot find that guy has a podcast. He's really good. Radio host voice, funnier than hell, lives in Coos Bay, but he just went down and did the same thing, bluefish.
Do a 3-day trip?
Yeah, it was like a 3-day trip or something.
So it helps that we rented out the whole boat, right? So it costs a little bit less when you do that.
Okay,
it that way.
Right. How many people?
The boat could hold 30 people, but we had 24 people. That's their preferred size is 24.
Okay. And so you guys just had a group of 24 guys that went.
And I knew,
wow, that would be a blast.
I knew 2 guys on the boat to start with, but I'll tell you, I made a lot of good friends while we were on there, because you're sitting around having lunch, drinking coffee, sharing ideas on stuff. There's nobody's phone works. There's no internet.
Right.
So all you can do is just talk to guys about fishing.
That is awesome. $1,500 is nothing for the experience that you're getting out of it. Plus, I mean, how many times have you caught bluefin?
That was my first bluefin. It was a awesome. Hell of a first time. I got broken in good.
Did you get more than one?
So I hooked up on a total of 4 and was only able to land one of them.
You guys are always deep dropping for them, or are you trolling for them? Or...
At night is the most productive time. So the sun drops and the captain is off in search of schools. Yeah, because they're actually skittish fish, believe it or not. As huge as they are, they're really line wary, and they're really skittish, and you're not going to land them on light tackle.
Every time you see a video of them, like they're pitching herring or whatever the bait is over the side, and the fish come up out of nowhere, and they just whoosh, these 900-pounders are eating them, and then they put a fish in a mullet or whatever and on a hook and throw it out there, and the fish grabs it. It's not like that at all.
So in that fishery, I didn't see it like that. I guess occasionally it does get like that. So the majority of the fishing is at night fishing, and it's yo-yo fishing, and basically everybody lines up on the rail and you're following the current, right? Because you don't want anybody to tangle. So you're doing this assembly line down the rail, dropping and speeding it back, dropping again.
Oh, and you're moving.
Yeah. And then when you get to the end of the line,
so you're dropping and you're moving, and then when you get to the end, you go back to the front and then you're dropping and moving. And when you say yo-yo, just so people get it. So what I call a speed jigging or slow pitch jigging would be more of a yo-yo thing to me, because you're down there and then you're yo-yoing it up and down. Speed jigging, you're dropping it all the way down to where the fish are, and then you are ripping that thing back up as fast as you can, and that thing's shooting through the water column as it goes, and those fish will grab it. You're just reeling as fast as you can.
You're reeling as fast as you can, and all of a sudden you cannot reel anymore. And there's a couple of seconds while the fish realizes it's hooked, and then all hell breaks loose. There were a couple of guys who were successful on the butterflies, but they were speed jigging the butterflies.
Really? So a butterfly jig, or I believe the butterfly would be with the slow pitch. So we were way off track, but that was cool shit. You make me want to go.
You should go.
Gosh. I had no idea that. I didn't even know they did that stuff. That is. I didn't know we had bluefin off the California coast. Actually.
Yep, they always have, but they haven't been schooling until the last 5 years.
It's funny. I just happened to read an article where the bluefin are actually coming back because of the international cooperation, trolling, and harvests and stuff. So when you guys were there. And I know you just listed everybody. How many people total?
So we had 14 people total.
Okay, and did all 14 fish? Was anybody like a runner-up kind of guy that just went in case somebody got sick?
So everybody fished. However, it was noticed that we needed a little support. Actually, all of the countries needed a little support. So on the second day, Allen Sansano and Annie Nagel decided, basically just manning a panga boat and making sure that everything was going off okay. They stepped out of the competition, so it left us with 12 people actively fishing it.
But that's that's a very important aspect. People stopped, they got in a panga boat because the support-wise, if somebody had an issue, they flipped, needed help. That's what the panga boat is for.
I think what drove that, actually, the pangas were there. If your kayak broke or you got injured, they would bring you in. That's the only support, and you were out of the competition at that point. None of your fish counted towards points if the panga had to support you. The reason that we felt the need to do that was, in Costa Rica, everything is kind of soft and not really in the moment. It's whatever, we do whatever, and nothing really gets done. So
they're just kind of laid back, chill. I'm gonna take a nap.
Pure Vita, Pure Vita, it'll all be okay. So what happened was, on the first night, everybody was back on the beach, and we're like breaking down our kayaks and going over what worked, what didn't work. And I pointed out to somebody, I go, hey, there's somebody still out there fishing. They're like, yeah, it's probably one of the locals out there fishing. But no, it turned out actually one of the Mexican team members broke down out on the water, and they didn't realize it for a long time. So he was actually out there after dark, and the panga had to go search around to find him, bring him back to the beach. So at that point, we realized,
holy smokes.
So at that point, Team USA actually hired the panga and told them, look, we want you watching out for our guys, but we want you watching out for everybody on the water. Because, that's a serious situation. Right. You're fishing 2 to 6 miles offshore on kayaks that, the kayaks that were provided locally, the first set were not safe, just totally not safe. We told them, we're not even going to accept these. You find us something else. And I don't want to burn the kayak company, because, he didn't understand the stresses we were going to put on him and what was going to happen. But that first set of kayaks, we tried pre-fishing on twice. Both times, either the rudders failed hard, like you couldn't turn them anymore, or the drives came apart and stopped working. While I was going to pre-fish,
so then they didn't have. No, so then they didn't have like Hobie shipped over, or native shipped over, or any of that stuff. This was literally I assume every country was in the same kind of kayak.
So the local Costa Rica guys, the Ticos, they had their personal kayaks there because it's their country, right? The Mexican team, for the most part, was relying on basically rental kayaks. And the American team were definitely relying on rental kayaks. In fact, we had talked about that, why we didn't have Hobies dropped out there or something like that. And the reason for that was, this whole journey began last August when Allen Sansano and Boogie D were in La Paz, and they talked to a Mexican kayak fisherman. He's like, are you guys going to fish the Pan American competition? And they said, the what? And they found out more info, and they're like, dude, we could make this happen. So really, they didn't even have the backing of U.S. Angling until probably, February, March, which left us just a couple of months to get everything pulled together. That's not even enough time to get them on a ship and moved up there. So everything was kind of a struggle and pulled together at the last moment. And, most of us paid our own way.
And I do remember, not to cut you off there, but I do remember that, a lot of those guys were looking for support from outside anglers, just to be able to support the trip to Costa Rica, because it was something you guys were paying most of the way. But it's looking to be sponsored in the future.
Yeah.
Correct?
So the goal is to actually cover travel expenses and all of that with corporate sponsorship, which, U.S. Angling supports most of the bass competitions and all of the competitions across the United States. They're sort of the foundation on which the big national contests are built. And it turned out that the staff of U.S. Angling and the people who are already involved in different teams were really surprised that we got any kind of sponsor support. Allen, if nothing else, he is the great connector. He's great at putting people together, and he knows everybody in the industry. The goal is by October, most of the expenses are going to be covered by sponsors who just, want to hold up the plaque that they get for having supported Team USA.
Well, it's a big deal when it comes to being able to sell product and do different things. I mean, we supported Team USA, and they went and got gold in our boat, with our gear, with our rods, with our reels, with our tackle. People you're going to use that stuff because it worked. And, again, you guys got the gold while you were there. So, that would mean a ton to a manufacturer that's, going to be selling the stuff you use.
The key, though, is that manufacturers and distributors have a marketing cycle, and that marketing cycle is a year long. So if you really want some serious gear or money, you actually have to hit them up at least 10 months earlier and be within their cycle so they plan to support you. And we didn't have that kind of time.
When I remember everybody first realized you were going on this, that's when I was like, how the heck, where did this come from? It was like out of the blue instantly.
Right.
There was no, nobody knew anything other than, obviously you, but I mean, like there was nothing leading up to, hey, we're trying out for this, or maybe I'll get this, or maybe that, you know what I mean? It just was, hey, guess what? I'm going to participate on USA Kayak Fishing Team. We're going to go here, but we need some support because we don't have the sponsor.
I know it sounds crazy, but I found out that quickly too. I literally got a text from Allen saying, hey, who's the best saltwater fisherman in the Northwest? And I'm putting together a list of the best saltwater fishermen in the Northwest to send him. And he hits me back before he hit send on it. And he goes, no, I'm talking about you. You want to go to Costa Rica and represent the United States? That's how it all started.
Heck yes, you do. Hell yes,
2 months notice.
And how could you pass up an experience like that? Even if it's a once in a lifetime thing, that is, or to me anyways, and I am passionate, just like you are, about the kayak fishing community, the different ways of being amazing ambassadors, and this being part of the USA Kayak Fishing Team absolutely is a pinnacle, whether people know about it or not. This is a pinnacle of all of those things that we try to do. You will always be known as one of the first members to compete or be part of the USA Kayak Fishing Team. And it's going to go on from here. It's going to get bigger and bigger. And it's just like, this is what gives people that desire, lights that fire within them to try to do something. I am just real quick, me personally, when I find out if they have a qualifying event, I'm going to go. I want to be able to do this. I feel like I personally could do this very well. And this is my personal fat-headed opinion. I've spent a lot of time on the salt. I've spent a lot of time. Believe it or not, I had a guy pay a guide like $3,000 a weekend for 2 months of weekends to teach me how to do things like rig ballyhoo, to run the different rods, to do all these different things, where you run the baits in the waves, in the face of the wave or the back of the wave, how you do all this stuff. And I ate it up. I loved it. And living out here in the Pacific Northwest, it's a different kind of fishery, as you well know. We don't, we don't do those things. We're not trolling at 8 to 11 miles an hour.
Yeah.
We're not doing any of that. We don't even have the speed jigging. The slow pitch thing for us here it's a hybrid of what they do in Hawaii or even in California. California, their slow pitch is a hybrid of what they do in Hawaii. And for us, it's a hybrid of what they do in California. I mean, we're taking a slow pitch jig, dropping it to the bottom, and you lift and let that fall, and it flutters, and all we're doing is lifting and let it fall. There is no lift, let it fall, reel, lift, let it fall, reel, as a real slow pitch jigging operation. Or you go out into the warmer water this time of year where the albacore are in, and even off the coast of Washington, they've gotten a marlin or two. They've gotten what are those fish called? Opia?
Opa. Yeah.
Opa. Those things, they've gotten some of them. They've gotten some different types of mackerel. Of course, we have a mackerel here, but they've gotten some of the warm water stuff.
So the guys in the know actually pick up bluefin off Oregon and Washington, but they're really deep and they're really far out.
Yes, really far out. And normally what I was getting to, what everybody looks for when you're looking for those kinds of fish is you can get on the internet. You can see where the currents and the water temperatures are, and you want to hit that 70-degree mark. And, that's why I like fishing like down off Coos Bay. Sometimes that 70-degree mark is 10 miles offshore, whereas up here off of our coast in Oregon or southern Washington, you're 50 to 60 miles offshore before you hit that mark.
Yeah.
And where you hit the 70 degrees, that's when you start running into the pelagics. You could speed jig out there, I suppose, for some of the albacore and stuff. But, man, after being in Hawaii and fishing and doing things there, I am still a novice speed jigger. I didn't realize albacore were considered dog food, like legit. Like, we rave about them here. And if you look on a list of what good tuna is and bad tuna is, albacore is literally a one step above bonito. And bonito is good for dog food, and they say albacore is good for smoking and dog food. And then above that, believe it or not, is yellowfin, which is good for they say barbecuing and smoking. And then you have the big eyes, which we got into big time in Hawaii. We rented a boat, took that thing 15 miles offshore. Me, Bobby Pereira, and Michael McCord. I couldn't get Brandon to go out. Brandon did not want to go offshore, even though it was 5 miles an hour wind wise. I couldn't wait to get offshore. But I have a ton of experience with offshore boating. I can plot courses. I can do, I can figure speed. I can tell you how long it's going to take us to get somewhere, go on a current speed. I can figure set and drift. I can do all that stuff from my time in the Coast Guard. I have retained all of it. I love doing it. And so I was not afraid of any of it. Brandon didn't want to go out because he had some bad experiences there with the waves. And so the last day he didn't go. We went out there and we absolutely destroyed the big eye tuna. The big eyes, I didn't realize they were like this coveted tuna thing. And we got back into the dock and everybody's like, "Oh my God, where'd you get those? Where'd you get those?" And these were only like, I think a big one was like 10 pounds. They weren't that big.
But if they taste good, that's what you want.
Yeah. And we had a whole stack of them. And then the next fish above that is that bluefin. Mm-hmm. The bluefin is the top notch, So we make a big deal of the albacore here, where other people think, well, that's poopy. That's not even worth going after.
So, Jim, that's what we've got.
So,
right. So, I mean, as far as the tuna that are available to us, that's what we've got. So it's at the top of our list. And honest to God, they are good.
I think they're delicious. Yeah. When I heard they were made for dog food and only smoking, I'm like, huh?
Well, I mean, honestly, that's what all the canned tuna is, right? And I think that's the thing. It's so pedestrian.
Yes. Yep. But I will say this, and anybody that's listening to this, you go have a can of albacore tuna from the store in oil or water or whatever it is, and then you go have a fresh albacore tuna, you will never eat that canned shit again. There is a difference. Yep. Call it bad or not. The fresh smoked canned tuna is out of this world, man. Yeah. To me, it is delicious.
Yep.
But I guess if you're eating fish from the gutter, you think it's delicious. You don't get to eat that golden stuff like the bluefin.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you called it yo-yoing. Was there any other technique that you used? What were you doing inshore? For your fisheries, you said you did the inshore stuff. What were you doing inshore? Were you doing like live baits, beaky rig stuff? Were you tossing lures, top water? What were you doing?
So, given my lack of experience, my day started like everybody else's. Went out, got some live bait, tossed them in the live. Every day started the same for the competitors. We'd all head over to the docks and we'd live bait up some makule. And we would load up on those or small snappers, whatever would bite in our live wells. We'd put something on our big rig, which is generally like an 80-pound setup. We'd run out, couple of 100 feet of line, and we would just tow that line around behind us.
Drag it around.
Yeah, and if something bit, something bit, and things bit.
That's the standard.
Yeah. So anyway, so the guys who are really experienced in this fishery, they were going out, they were hitting the points, the submerged rocks, the likely areas where you're going to pick up things like pompano and snappers and amberjacks, things like that. And they were speed jig roosters. Yeah. I actually had, I had one follow my jig all the way back to the boat. That was my one moment with a rooster, but there were several caught in the competition. Oh. It was pretty damn exciting.
Yeah, the roosters hang back of the surf, backside of the surf, the waves. They're in them. They're close to the bank.
Yeah, we were picking them up by a wash rock.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
So they were coming in, eating the bait around the wash rock. And the funny thing about that is I was tossing a hookup jig, which, by the way, are really good for Oregon as well. But I was speeding one. It's basically like a tube bait. It'll be anywhere from a 1 ounce to a 6 ounce jig. It looks like a tube with the back end cut off at an angle, and you wouldn't think they have much action.
Yes.
But those things.
I just saw one of these. I just saw these on, actually, of all places, Facebook. A big old tube. The guy was using it for muskie, and it was a hookup jig.
Yeah.
It's a big old tube.
Yep. And they work great. And I was catching grouper, grouper, snapper. They'd all hit it, right? I had a variety of sizes of those as well as my irons. But yeah, so the rooster's following it back, and I get a hit. I'm like, I got a hit. And Robert's next to me, and it gets closer, and I can see this white blur after it. He's like, that's a rooster. He goes, speed up. I had 15 feet back to the kayak to speed it up. There was no speeding it up. It just...
So you just right into the eye of the rod. Clink. Okay,
that's what happened, actually. It just went ting right to the end of my rod.
So that's going to conclude part 1 of a 2-part series of talking with Mark Veary from the USA Kayak Fishing Team. I've had a blast getting to talk with him about it, learn some stuff, hear some cool experiences, and there's a whole lot more in the next episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one as much as I've enjoyed talking with Mark, and you'll be with me on the next episode to hear the conclusion of Mark's time in Costa Rica and winning the gold. Thanks, guys. And until next time, tight lines.